don't. No choice. Choice doesn't apply here. Okay, well, let's get started, if that's okay. You know, one thing I like about being a moderator is I only get to ask questions. I don't have to answer them. And today is Friday, I spent Wednesday with my 6-year-old grandson. This kid had so many questions. We went to COSI, so I'm the expert now on Star Wars, dinosaurs, and sharks. So if you haven't been to, if you want to get schooled on that, go to COSI. They have a wonderful exhibit. But boy, did he have a lot of questions. We took him home the other day. I said, I'll see you in a few days. So if you have a 6-year-old or if you have a 6-year-old grandson. Well, I'm going to ask our panelists to just take a minute and introduce themselves. And I hope that you will generate some questions. These folks bring incredible experience, credentials, and know what we're talking about today. So let's take advantage of their expertise. And I've got some questions I've prepared, but I certainly hope that as an audience you'll be able to kick in and ask. So Tim, if you want to start, introduce yourself and tell us a little about your school.
My name's Tim Allen. I am the principal at Southeast Ohio Classical Academy. We are just outside of Logan, Ohio. We opened last fall. We opened up our first day. We had 67 kids show up. This coming year will be over 200 students. That's where we're at right now. Yeah, it's great. This is going to be an easy panel. I said 10 words and there's applause. That's amazing. So a little bit of a long, winding road into classical. I was in teacher education, went to a school. I fell in love with people that I think love the same thing, and we talked about it and had a wonderful team that is in Madison Christian School, which is here as well today. So it's awesome to see those people. And then from that, another school was like, I don't know why he's qualified, I guess, for that, but hey, he's going to take with this school. I'm just kidding. They actually looked at my credentials. But I went to SoCA, and then we started the school last fall, and then here I am today. And like I said, it's our second year, so that's probably enough about me. Oh, I like tractors. I like driving old tractors with my son out in the pasture. That's important for this. There you go. Fun fact of the day.
Oh, Tim, I don't think I can beat tractors, certainly. I'm Isaac Johnson, hailing from Cincinnati Classical Academy, another Hillsdale member school. We were founded in 2022. We now have 2 campuses, grades K through 9, almost 1,000 students. Very proud to be a part of the Hillsdale K-12 network. I myself, I'm Hillsdale, born and bred, went through the new school leadership program there at Hillsdale College in order to form new school leaders, and we can't find someone like Tim Allen. I have to say humbly, I'm a bit of an upstart crow or a young buck on this group. I look a lot younger than I really am, but I'm glad to be a part of this and what any insights I can give.
Unlike Isaac, I look older than I actually am. My name is Josh Lister. I'm the headmaster of Ancient Paths Christian and Classical Academy. We're in the Hilltop here in Columbus, Ohio, and we started through a church community there called the Village Church Columbus. And my background in classical education is that I graduated from New St. Andrews College. They had a graduate program in classical Christian studies. And prior to going into that program, I had no idea what classical education was. And I found that everything that I've learned about it since that program, through that program, all the books I've read, being involved, I just grow to love it more and more. I've been married for going on 11 years, and we have 3 children. So I'll pass it on to Dan.
I'm Dan Gibson, and I'm the head of school at Columbus Classical Academy. We're a non-chartered, non-public school in the Polaris area. We opened in August of 2023, and this coming year we expect to have around 130 students. And we also we're a Hillsdale curriculum school, so we also teach from the Hillsdale K-12 curriculum, and I'm just thrilled to be here and hopefully can offer some helpful insights to y'all.
Okay, thanks very much. Well, I told you, these are the folks that can help us out today, certainly. Excuse me. The first question or area I'd like to address with our panelists is if you could share with us how your classical school, in particular in your each individual schools, handles students in many cases that are new to this whole world of classical ed, kids that don't start in kindergarten or starting in kindergarten, the whole new experience. And then kind of lined up with that, how do you create a learning environment in your school with that classical model that addresses your student population? So it's kind of a two-part question, but again, how are you handling students that are new to this? How does that all work? And then specifically, what kind of environment are you creating in your school to make it work? And we'll just go down the aisle if you want to start.
Do it that way every time?
No. I can be bought. No, we can. Tim, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I mean, we're only speaking from a couple of years of that and a little bit of the background with the school that onboarded, and not all the way into the leadership in that. First, classical education is a culture, right? That's the first part of it, and doing it well and doing it very carefully. Talking about things like decorum and orderliness and respect, and then cultivating that first. It's easy to get wrapped up in the curriculum and forget that it's also a culture, right? We talk about paideia, like transferring a way of life and talking about that as a value. And so it's very complex. I would say it's a holistic view of trying to create a school environment that people want to come to and then understand. It's not enough just to put the material in front of them and just say, here's these great books, let's do these things, and then just say, good luck, we hope you really like it. So for new families that come in, it's everything from experiencing it. We have a very strong open door, open chair policy. That's what we call it at the school. We invite families in all the time. I dedicate a lot of my day, and my staff does too, just to spending time with families to come into the school and see what's really happening. In some ways, like seeing it is the best thing that can happen. Now, getting there initially and doing it well is very difficult, and having that place that people want to behold and take part in. But then once they're in, you have a kind of that gateway process of people see it, they don't really understand classical, and we all are learning it in our own ways. But then coming in and then actually seeing the beauty of it, and then because they've kind of drunk the water, coming in and doing more of it. So I would say first from us, just maybe to kind of launch the panel, I won't speak longer than that for this, is just developing the culture and letting people encounter that first is just kind of a gateway and just not losing focus for that.
That's good, Tim. And I would say, too, our school, it's grown fast. And now that we have almost 900 students, I can give you an anecdote of this. So this past year, we opened up our second campus, middle school, and we had over 50 students enter new to classical. Most of the families also new to classical education. So if you think about, you have 300 students on one campus, and 50 of them are new to this model. What success could you anticipate in that way? How could you be proactive in cultivating and nourishing that culture, not just merely for buy-in, but truly to ennoble, right, their souls, cultivate those study habits, those academic skills. And so what we've found is that the heart of the culture, still beating heart, is the teachers. And when the teachers embody, right, and they themselves are overflow of their own lives into the classroom, it's infectious for the students, it's infectious for the parents. So when we anticipated, potential cultural issues with having 50 new students come in from all various backgrounds, we found that in order to have this welcoming for the students, we have to elevate the norm in any way possible towards that classical model. So for example, for us, if we're gonna have a school dance, then we are going to elevate that norm. So this past year, again, just a small anecdote, we brought in all the parents to put on what we called Fezziwig's Ball after our middle school students read Christmas Carol. We had a performance of Christmas Carol, and we had a live band, we taught formal dancing. And you would have students, we had several Uzbekistani families who had never had an experience like that, and they were just in awe of what we could formalize and elevate in that way. And now that's going to be one of our recurring cultural touchstones at our school. So I think part of this, right, the faculty need to be modeling that. You need to be hiring faculty to start in that way, but that's where the culture begins.
Well, at our school, we are unapologetically a Christian school and unapologetically a classical school. So what I found with onboarding families into that is to be really intentional to highlight those distinctives to them on the front end. And so the draw for maybe the temptation is that I don't want to see somebody walk away because they're put off by the distinctives, and I have to fight that. So I want to say all of the things that our cultural expectations for our school on the front end. And so that way I know that if they choose to go somewhere else, they're choosing a different culture that they want. And so Once they are on board and they've partnered with us, I know there's alignment there. And then you can have a lot more success in achieving the ends that we're setting out to do if there's alignment with the parents from the front. And for some of those families, they're not sure about classical education and they're still learning about it. We use different, we have, whether it's parent orientation or training staff to have a consistent voice in how we talk about classical education, making sure that there's resources available to people. We have a Substack that I send out to all of our families and people who are connected with the school. I let teachers write for that Substack as well. And the hope for that is that it's an educational way for our families to understand what our mission is at a school, what it means to be a classical school, what it means to be a Christian school. And we've found that we've been able to retain most of the families that come to our school as a result of that.
Yeah, so I think about it in two sort of different categories. I think about the parents and I think about the students. In some ways, I think the students are in a weird way easier. To them it's just school, and I don't need them to fully understand the classical model. What I need them to do is to buy into the culture and structures that we've established, and that tends to happen relatively easily. Students will, if a classroom is well run, essentially fall into the rhythms of that classroom. They will generally follow their peers in the recitations and the chanting of songs and all the other things that are a part of the classical instructional model. And so that's about equipping teachers to do that well, so that whether they have a new student or a student who's been there for a couple of years, that rhythm is just, it very quickly becomes natural to the student. I think the parents are a lot harder, and a lot of that happens. We're also a private school, and so we have an admissions screening process. And so that's where we address it a lot with parents on the front end. One of the things that we emphasize, because I think in a lot of ways, not just academically, but classical education is a swim upstream. It is fundamentally anti-modern. And so we're asking them on a regular basis to over and over and over choose the hard thing. And so I'm put that to them in the family interviews, and we talk about that, and we talk about not just that your student might not get the grades that they're accustomed to if they're transferring in from a traditional public school, but also that you as a parent are probably going to get a lot of no's about certain things because we don't do those things here, and we have reasons for those. And I have to back that up then on the backside with, we'll have parent coffee once a month where we discuss an article that I think helps highlight some of the reasons for the way we do things the way we do. But that's a constant sort of education of the parents, so that every time we ask them to do something hard or ask them to accept that their child has to do something hard because it is different, that they get the why behind it all. So I would say those two sides of the parent and teacher for new students is really important.
Thanks very much. I was gonna, if you have questions after each session, after each round, please feel free to raise your hand and ask. I'd rather do that and wait till the end. If you have something you'd like to ask them about right now, or we can wait till afterwards. Any questions based on what we just heard? I've got one little follow-up for you. Do you, again, I'll turn it over if somebody speaks up. Do you get a lot of, for lack of a better term, and I've heard this in the criticism of the school choice movement, shoppers? And so they come in and they don't like the food, so they're in for a week and then they come back, or they don't like the teacher, or they don't like this whole classical thing. It's not what they thought it was going to be. Is there, I guess my question is there a percentage of that? Do you get some of that? Do you get some churn on that? Or is pretty much when a student, when you've done your work that you just described, do they stick with you at least for the short term?
You want
I
to
could
start
start-
on the other end?
Yeah,
this time,
so we'll
Tim?
give you
Yeah, I've looked at, I mean, we've only been around for 2 years, and so we don't have a ton of data or a lot of information on why, and we're relatively small, I mean, with 130 students this coming year. But when you look at why people don't return, and our re-enrollment rates have been around 90%, which is solid, but for a private school, it's not as high as we would like to be at full maturity. Some of it is shopping. It tends to be the families that were running away from something, either a really bad experience in the public schools or at another private school, that have a shorter sort of lifespan on their tolerance for it. And you tend to see, and one of the things that we work on in our admission screening is families who have had their kid in 4 different schools over the last 3 years tells you a little bit about both their deliberation when they make the choice of school, but also their tolerance for any measure of difficulty. And so it happens, but I think for us as a private school, the better job we do at the screening on the front end, the smaller the percentage we see there. Josh and I were just talking about how the good news is, as far as I can tell, the greatest or plurality of our withdrawals tend to be people just moving out of the region. And so that doesn't really, I don't think, fall into the shoppers category as in the same way.
Yeah, I would just add to that. So we're also, like Dan's school, we're smaller, we're under 100 students, and we're going into our 3rd year. We've been able to retain the vast majority of our families. So we don't have, I wouldn't say a shopper's mentality with families that choose to enroll. So what I've seen though is that on the front end, people will be interested in our school, and then again, we highlight our distinctives to them in that initial onboarding process, and then they self-select and choose something different as a result.
I think one of the greatest dilemmas, especially for the classical charter schools that are still young, right, in their various networks here in the States, that most of them, they might be K through 5, K through 6, K through 8. They're just now developing their upper school, moving on towards senior theses, graduation. And many of these parents who are refugees of the conventional public school, other types of school, they're fleeing from something. That doesn't necessarily mean that they are intentionally moving towards you, towards your mission. And so for us, one of the great struggles that we're anticipating going from K-8 to K-9 is that, if you've heard about Cincinnati, especially in that region, when someone asks you where you went to school, they're not asking you, where did you get your college degree, right? Where did you go to graduate school? They're asking you about your high school. And especially the 150-year, well-established, especially Catholic boys' schools, girls' schools, there's quite a dominance there, right, with deep-seated heritages in the families. And so for us, we were thinking, well, a number of those families, they're running from something, and they know that they're not going to quite find that in these well-established schools that have bought into this conventional model that's not working, right? It's not the tried and true. And so what we asked ourselves is, what do they need to see? What do we need to articulate clearly, lucidly, in order to be able to show them what we do is meaningful for their students? And so one way of this, it's not necessarily just bringing parents right into the classroom in the heat of it. What we did at open houses, high school parent info night series, is that we just had them move through the school building in an evening where all the teachers are giving lessons. And what we did, we didn't even expect many students to show up, 8th graders, but they did with their parents. And so you could have a lesson in classical architecture, and you have an 8th grade girl who's thinking, maybe I want to play lacrosse at this, the school that my grandmother went to in the area. And she is delighted and wondering at this architecture lesson alongside her father, her mother. And we found that this to be one of the most effective ways of showing our culture, showing our mission, is through those types of programs. So I would just emphasize as much as possible to be candid, to be lucid in what you're teaching, and not, right, it's such a myth that you can have a value-free school, right? If you claim you're a value-free school, you're unintentionally or intentionally trying to subvert values of your students, right, of fellow teachers. And so we really need to grow from principles and stay rooted in them as a school.
Yeah, maybe thinking a little bit about retention here and working with parents and student success, like I heard a little bit of that early on. I always think about the story of the prodigal son, right? So this idea of he goes out, he gets nothing, and then everyone loves the part about the son coming back home and gets everything he's invited for, he's welcome. I think classical ed's like that. Everyone's welcome to the return, everyone's welcome to take part in this. However, the key part in the middle of that story is that the son goes out, he gets nothing, and he comes to his senses. So, with what we do when we onboard families, we have to make sure they're aware of what they're choosing, right? And so a big part of what we're trying to do even for next year is with really strong parent onboarding, like having families come out, hear our best practices, know what we're doing. We want everyone to take part, but if these students are going to succeed and actually flourish in this environment, the parents have to know and they have to be sold out to what we're doing. If they're not, they're just begging for failure for the children, and so we have to do that up front.
Very good, thank you. I'd like to shift gears a little bit here. I wonder if each of you could discuss one or two, and more if you want, but what are some of the challenges that you're really facing? If you had to list top challenges as school leaders or board members in helping ensure the success of your school. And we realize there's a lot, but I wonder if you could address a few of those, each of you, and talk about what you're doing to try and address those issues. And Tim, I will start with you again on this, if we could.
I think as a school leader, there's simultaneously like two levels of things that are happening. One, there's the imminent and real and practical things in front of you that are happening that are very serious concerns. And then the things we talk about in a conference like this, which is like, I call them like the proxy wars. They're not really in front of you. They're not actually like going over the top and like fighting the enemy. It's just something that affects you, and it's bigger, and it's so complex that like, yeah, it's a really serious issue and you're dealing with it, but it's not the thing in front of you. The main thing's right in front of me. Great teachers. Where do you find them? How do you train them? How do you cultivate them? How do you make them love what they're doing even more? How do you allow them to flourish in this environment and not burn out and feel full all the time? Those are the kinds of things that actually are like my top ones. It's like teacher fulfillment, teacher requirements, teacher discipline, and providing that kind of thing. The second one, I would say, is just student support. How do we allow this to be accessible and successful to all the students? You know, I think it's really easy to get wrapped up in, you know, funding and the busing and all the other things that are real and they're very significant and they're serious. But at the end of the day, that's the battle in front. And like, we have to do that really well.
Well, in tandem with that, with teacher formation, I would want to speak to the challenges of student formation. I have previous experience as Dean of Student Life, over 600 students all the way down to kindergarten. You can imagine the various situations you'd find yourself in through those grades. And one of them I'll highlight is often this, from the parent perspective, there are many terms for this. I'm not going to use medicalization of misbehavior, but that is one that is often thrown around. But often the struggle with students who they might have a diagnosis, they might have some type of defiance there in the classroom. And the question, you could think of this in a kindergarten classroom, the sweet savages, right, that you must civilize in that self-contained homeroom, all the way up in the grades. And the question is, you know, to what extent can and should we form that and cultivate docility, right? Humility in the students, right? Do we have to just write them off as there's no way of approaching that type of defiance, that type of, you know, whatever term you give it, insubordination. And so I think for us, we found that instead of just facing off as teachers in this grapple for power in a classroom, because we do have to think about the classroom environment as a little political community, as a little regime. And so what is the position of the teacher in that regime in terms of cultivating these good habits, right, and virtue in the students? And I think it's one that you need to have teacher-led classrooms, but also one in which the parents know that this is a partnership with them. We always stress that with the parents, right? Being teachers, we can see far ahead, but that doesn't mean that we don't love your children more, that we don't know your children more than you do as the mom, as the dad, and yet we have to have that partnership in order to move forward with that student's formation.
My mind's on school culture now and obedience in classroom behavior, now that he mentioned that. I think it's a challenge for every school. That doesn't mean you can't have success in that area. And I think we've seen levels of success at our school, and that's done through discipleship. I think that's part of us being a Christian school, is that we have, for our younger children, we establish both with their parents early on, and for them, that their expectation is that they are to listen, to obey, and be respectful. And those are their 3 rules. And if they break those rules, we want to address it. We see that as an integral part of education. And so if our students understand that God wants them to listen and obey and be respectful to their teachers, and that their parents want that for them too, and they're going to bring honor to their parents if they do that, I think that layers meaning onto that classroom environment. And a lot of what classical education is recapturing the meaning that's been stripped out of everything. So behavior is not about compliance. I think you truly are shepherding a heart in that moment. And so having the courage and encouraging our teachers to have the courage to address those moments when they occur in the classroom, and not to delay, yields a great benefit. So then you won't have the same persistent behavioral issues that could come up. But it's still it's always going to be a challenge, and I think it's unavoidable because you're dealing with human beings who by their nature will not always do what you ask them to do or want to please you in a way that they should.
I'd say our two biggest challenges are first, just being new. There's never the opportunity to say, well, that's just the way we do things here, because everything is always up for definition because it's the first time we've done things here. And so there's a lot of input, there are a lot of voices, there are a lot of folks who want to be a part of that process, which is great, but at the end of the day, we have a mission and we have principles, and there are certain things that we do a certain way, and being able to communicate that without getting our community to have sort of no exhaustion is a real challenge sometimes. And a lot of that falls on, again, educating in the why and making sure that the things that are different that may seem like we're leaving out fun stuff, or we're leaving out a lot of the stuff that seems to just be the normal part of school, that really isn't, from our perspective, any component of the classical model, or if it is, it's something that is much lower down on the priority list, is something that we're constantly having to do, and continually educating our community in that regard. And then the other is that institutionally, starting a school is just a massive enterprise. It's massively expensive, and it is still a business, even though it's a nonprofit enterprise. And so the financial picture, although we've been blessed to improve every year in terms of our growth and our financial posture, it's always until you're a mature school. And operating in a place where you have sufficient enrollment to essentially sustain at least close to 90% of your operating expenses, then you're always looking for the donors to support what you're doing, and that's a constant challenge for us to make sure that we grow wisely and don't just chase enrollments so that we can boost the bottom line, but at the same time manage our budget in a way that actually still fits with the mission. So I'd say those are the two biggest challenges for us right now.
Very good. Questions? Anything at this point? I'd like to move on to an area that challenges all charter schools as well as the classical schools, and that's leadership positions and teachers. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit, share with us at your school what you're doing specifically to support your faculty and your staff, whether it's professional development or if you've got some incentive programs, or what are you doing to support those folks? Is it successful? Are you able to increase your retention rate with teachers? And then in the same regard, leadership, whether it's a principal or anybody, but I'd like to have you share with the audience that whole issue of teacher, staff, retention, what works, what is happening in your school to make it stick, so to speak, and as for leadership, and if you're willing to share with us, where are you getting your teachers? I see a lot of Hillsdale resumes when I look at your websites, but are there others? And I'm sure just because you go get a bachelor's from Hillsdale doesn't necessarily mean you're a good teacher. But could you maybe not, maybe? Okay. Tim, I'll start with you.
I don't think I can speak too long about retention. I mean, we're pretty new, so it's hard to take my word for it, but I'll tell you what my instinct is. First, you have to provide opportunities for development. One of the benefits of being a Hillsdale K-12 school is we have, I believe, the best teacher support system in
Yes.
operational support. Anything with documents, resources, we have it. So that's the first benefit we have. Now, past that, you have to provide systematically your teachers with bandwidth. My father-in-law has these really weird management sayings he'll repeat back to me sometimes when I tell him my problems, and he describes sometimes businesses and schools apparently like steaks. He says that if you grill a steak that doesn't have enough fat on it, there's no sizzle, and I kind of didn't understand what that meant. The idea though is okay, you have to have something on here that's a little extra, and so for your teachers, if their schedules and the way you structure their day are just taxing them to the end and they don't have time to actually do the thing and to flourish and to study and to read and be those full human individuals, they're going to burn out anyway. It doesn't matter what you do or how great your program is. So you have to invest in that, in the bandwidth of your time and your resources to support that. If your teacher has 6 different preps and you're like, that's wonderful, they're a great teacher, you're going to lose that person. Go ahead and count on it. They're there for a time. That's a stopgap, right? Also, what does your pocketbook say? When you're doing your budget, are you actually writing checks to support them in their education? I think one of the things we're doing as a very small school that I'm very proud of is we're writing checks for our people to go back to school. I have 2 people that I think could be wonderful teachers, but because of our environment, they never had an opportunity to get a bachelor's degree. They're going to school now. They're aides in my school. They're doing our training. We're having them go back and do those programs because we have to raise those people. For those that are in our school that want further opportunities to study, we're providing money for that. I want our budget to reflect what we value, which is our teachers, right? We have to do that with our schedule, with our resources. We have to communicate that. We can't just say it. We can't say we're teacher-led and that excellence of teachers is what matters. We have to show that. And so that would be maybe my first thing to like retention and to flourishing as a school is that they have to know that. I can't just say that, right? But I'm gonna leave it past that. I'm not gonna give all my hiring secrets after that, so.
Now, I'm just thinking about our school. We've had over 30 new teachers and new staff. Last year and this year, again, a lot of growth. And we always begin our in-service training with this question. You think about the various elements of an excellent school, right? You have your board, you have your school leadership, you have the school culture, you have the curriculum, you have the teachers. We always ask them, what's the one that if you removed it, if you omitted it from those five canons, would it still be an excellent school? And without a pause, those teachers always say, I guess it's us, right? If you have beautiful books lined up in your school, if you have a beautiful building, right, with artwork from the tradition plastered throughout, right? If you have a supportive parent community with good athletics, good plays, right, good concerts. If you have a board who's very supportive and able to be able to execute those logistics, will you still have an excellent school? And without those teachers, no. And we talk through why that's the case, and that goes into then our coaching and our approach to training throughout the years there and why we have such high retention with our teachers already. So for us, it's that the buck stops with you, the heart of the school, our faculty at leisure together. And when I say at leisure, it means that we're constantly learning together. It's a trade, it's not just a science of teaching, right? It's one that you have to have that mentorship. So we always have mentors put in place for those teachers right from the get-go. And that's part of my own work. We try to be as lucid and clear in articulating our mission and our expectations for the teachers right from the beginning. In a way that we're not ever wanting them to burn out. But we find that, especially in the Hillsdale Network, we're not handing them a script, right, for the classroom. I do think that type of mundane, handed down from on high type of teaching will never satisfy the vocational aspirations of one who loves the truth, loves goodness, loves beauty. And so what we do is we're able to provide whatever resources they need. And thankfully through Hillsdale, we have this beautiful program guide where we're able to say, here's the scope and sequence of the year for you. Here are the books that are recommended by this, but you're on your own at that point, besides our own coaching, right, coming alongside you. And part of this is that we want to emphasize the content-rich knowledge of the teachers and then be able to equip them with the tools and the techniques in order to deliver that beauty, that truth, that goodness to the students there. And I would say you need to hit that throughout the school year too, right? So it's not just your in-service for those new teachers right as they come on. We often have faculty symposia that involve good food and drink conversation around the curriculum so that the teachers are always knee-deep in it. You might have a Singapore math lesson from a kindergarten teacher, and you have high school teachers understanding how much classroom management goes into governing a kindergarten classroom well and what they can learn from it. And I think one of the major issues, right, with teacher retention is that they often feel like they are eggs in a carton. I'm getting this from Eric Twist back there. They just feel like they're siloed in every classroom. When they start teaching, they close the door and they're completely removed from the rest of the school. And so to the best of our ability, we want the teachers to be moving between classrooms, seeing, right, the good work of those mentors. I sub in order for those other teachers to be able to get into those rooms. All of our leadership team, we teach throughout the day. And we find that to be the most fulfilling. But then we can say, I'm not only going to give you those techniques, you can see them embodied in the classroom. I can learn something from you too by going into your room. So I think you have to normalize this very intensive coaching culture with your faculty where it's supportive, right? It's not merely evaluative. And I think the more that we normalize that and the more that we make it almost like apprentices in a trade shop rather than some administrator, we axe the administration, that term, as much as possible. And we say, we are teachers. Yes, we're in this position of authority in order to guide you, but there is not this divide between a bureaucracy and the teachers there in the classroom.
Similar to some of the other folks up here, our school is fairly recent. So the staff member that we lost, she moved to California, and it was very sad. But thankfully, I haven't seen a lot of turnover, but I only have a few years to kind of go off of. So what we do for our teachers as far as development and training is we make sure that we're, during the summer, taking them to some sort of teacher training that's in line with the goals of classical education. We are affiliated with the Association of Classical Christian Schools. We're a full member of that network, and they provide regional training, and it's very excellent. So a school in Cincinnati, Ohio, Mars Hill Academy, has hosted us a couple years now, and our teachers love that. They always leave that very inspired and rejuvenated to go back in the classroom and implement some of the ideas that they have from them. The benefit of that is an established institution. It sounds like you guys have something similar with Hillsdale, where if you can learn from people who have been doing it for a long time, that experience is invaluable, and then give that opportunity for your staff members to see, basically catch a vision for what you're trying to build, and at least in our case, what we're trying to build.
Say something not meant to be provocative, but you don't necessarily want all of your teachers to always come back. Sometimes they discover that it's not for them, and that's okay. And I think it's important to allow that process. So the goal is not just always 100% retention, and particularly as a new school, a lot of our teachers are trying this out in some ways just as much as our families are. And so what I want is for those teachers to sort of discover whether or not this is right. We don't bat 1,000 when we select people to hire, and that's okay. And as long as we love those individuals through whatever decision-making process they make on the back end, that's okay. But in terms of what we do to be able to keep our good teachers, and that's the overwhelming majority of them, I think one of the most important is that when difficulty arises, which it will, and in particular, if you have parents who are either complaining about grades or about how my child was disciplined or something along those lines, the single most, I think, valuable thing that we do is we back our teachers. And I think a lot of teachers have left the profession in mainline schools because there is anybody who tries to maintain discipline or order in their classroom has no support of leadership behind them. And in fact, they're usually questioned more than they are supported or defended. And sometimes that's hard because the parent comes to you in the leadership position and wants you to sort of correct the teacher when the teacher did exactly what they should have done. And it's an educational opportunity for you with the parents, but sometimes they don't want to learn. And so you have to be prepared to take that for what it is. But the other is just generally equipping them. I would reiterate what Tim said about leaving space. I do think it's very dangerous to overbook teachers, even the super talented ones, because it's an important profession and vocation, but they also are human beings and need to actually live out what they're trying to form in their students. And if you take that away from them, and part of the way that we are also blessed to be able to do that is with a lot of the Hillsdale resources. So we don't have to invent things from whole cloth, and being able to access the K-12 library and other things that are, just incredible assets to our teachers makes them feel like they're not on an island.
Sure, Tim, go ahead.
I want to interject one practical point about hiring some people that maybe exist in your schools and you don't know about them. And I was thinking here kind of carefully about some of the, I'll call them the all-stars in your school. You have them. You may not say that out loud, but who they are. They're the people that get it done, right? Where did we find some of those people right off the bat? I would recommend, we did a book study. So we did a couple of classical book studies. We had a book we put out. We had some reading groups, just did some stuff early like that. We had some opportunities for families to get involved and just do some community stuff with us. Just pay very close attention if you do those kinds of things. Who likes to learn? Like, who are those people and why do they keep coming back? Like, what is it they're craving? And then within the other side, like, who likes being at the school? Just like simply that question, who are the people you cannot, like, with a stick fend away because they want to be here? And, like, pay attention to that. Like, get to know those people really carefully, and you might find a lot of alignment about, like, there's something here that they actually are very close to in the mission. And then I have found those people have been just wonderful in the school community.
Now, Frank, I'm realizing we did not address your second question, right? And maybe this secret trades here that we can talk about with
Might be,
how to find teachers.
Yep.
You can look to a couple of job fairs and conferences that I think help a great deal. For example, Hillsdale's Classical School Job Fair. I know Cersei Institute on the East Coast that they have one that started up. But I would say the most important, and we picked this up from the great book Top Grading. Right, you always want to be not just upgrading positions, no matter if it's custodian all the way up to your headmaster, but top grading the quality of every single position in your school. And in finding someone, often with our interviewing and our hiring, we ask ourselves, is this a good person? Yes. Are they mission aligned? Yes. Where will they best fit in? We're not looking, does he teach Latin? Not quite, right? Doesn't have that experience, but is he willing to learn? Yes, and then we move from there. Now, I'll say as a part of this to use, and again, this is taking the leaf from Top Grading, use the networks of your own employees, of your own teachers, right? I'll often, if we have a very strong math teacher, I might ask, who are your friends who might be interested in coming on board? Because your own teachers might not know what are those positions for the next year that they could have colleagues from previous experience to take them on. We've had tremendous success with networking even within our own school and with our own teachers in that way. I think especially, I know there was the comment earlier about those young Hillsdale undergrads, right? They're very green. That might not, you don't want to pack your entire school with that type of teacher. Think about those refugee teachers from schools, the veteran teachers. They have tremendous networks of other teachers who are disgruntled and they want a different way. They just don't know how to access it or they don't know who. Lean on those veteran teachers in that networking. That's been the most successful for us.
Great.
I would also say just pray. I mean, a huge proportion of our teachers have come to us. We have not found them, and they have come at a time when we needed them, and there's no other explanation. So,
Great. Tim?
I have one more side
Sure.
comment for recruitment and retention. So one thing that we've done in our hiring process, we take a very long hiring process at our school. I'm proud of that. It makes for a long summer and for a long spring at times. We involve our teachers, a core group of them, in the hiring process. So in a second step interview, they actually hear the teacher, they interview, they talk with them. And one of the questions we adopted early on that now I've been hearing other people repeat, the San Antonio Spurs have this process in recruitment where they'll have at the bottom of it, not a Spur, and you can check it, and they'll just instantly say that person's not a fit for this institution. And that's how we evaluate. It's just like, is this person, we're a pioneer, so it's, is this person a pioneer? Yes or no? And listen to what your teachers say. I have found that right now that has made hiring much more difficult, let me tell you, like to get people that are a fit and I think are going to come in and stay and do the right thing and do it well. But it seems like the buy-in is really strong with that team of like, these are people we're excited about, they're here, they're in line with this, and they're ready to go, and they're really going to contribute to what we're doing.
Great. Thank God we're not where we were. I remember, Dave, you might remember this, or those of you who have been doing this a while. In the early days of the movement, we had kids that were graduating from undergrad schools here in Ohio with education degrees that were literally intimidated or afraid to start their career in a charter school because basically the districts were saying if you teach in a charter school, that's a black mark, if you will, on the record. You'll never get a job anywhere else. And I can remember I was up at Bowling Green State University, no disrespect to you alums that might be from BGSU, but they asked me to come and talk about charter schools. One of the professors, who is now retired, said it basically was advising his graduates, don't go in those charter schools. This was about probably 18 years ago because you'll never get a job. No one will hire you. You're not union protected in a charter school. So there was thank God we're beyond that. I think we're beyond that now, unless somebody sees that differently. So that's good to hear. I'd like to shift gears a little bit, talk about money, not that we don't want to talk about other things, but I wonder if you could talk a little, we know that it's a challenge for charter schools and for the classical schools. Talk a little bit about how you manage those dollars at your school, any tips, tricks, the thoughts, your engagement as school leaders in the process of managing money and fundraising. If your school's doing that, can you share a little bit about that as you as school leaders, folks in the school? So again, fundraising, money management. We all know the schools have treasurers and finance committees and such, but we still unfortunately have failures in schools. And at one point, I think the number was 80% of our charter schools that failed were because of money. So any thoughts? And I'll start. Dan, can I start with you on the end there?
Sure. No tricks or tips.
Okay.
Generally speaking, we're pretty conservative in the way that we manage money. We're not trying to, create a high-risk investment fund and solve our money problems that way. We also don't have a boatload of money to invest as it is right now. We're still in the growth mode. So we do depend heavily on fundraising as the sort of to bridge the gap between our enrollment and our cost of operating. And what I would say about fundraising is it is a challenge. It's a challenge in the particularly in the prospecting, what I would call prospecting area of fundraising, which is finding people that you can share the vision of your school with and not make it transactional. I think it's really important when we go about the sort of the job of fundraising that it's not thought of in those terms explicitly or exclusively. I've had some of the most wonderful conversations with individuals who never did and never will give $1. And I think those are just as important conversations. But it's also hard when you're a school leader and you're sitting there, I got to figure out a way to bridge this gap here. I've got to come up with somebody who's going to write that check. And I think patience is really important and not panicking over it. And I think prayer is really important as well. That God would bless your conversation with those individuals, because I think in every act of fundraising, you're still also evangelizing for classical education. Whether this individual becomes an eventual donor or not, there's a lot of, everything that's been talked about so far, particularly about the movement and its growth, still depends upon just people in our communities encountering more and more other people who understand and are committed to, have dedicated some aspect of their life to educating children classically. And so to make sure that the mindset in terms of fundraising is always, in some ways, first evangelism for classical education, and secondarily whether or not it's going to end up with a check in your hand. In terms of the management of the funds or the building out of budgets, I will say, I came to this position practicing law for 15 years, and so I had never run an organization at all. So for the first year, my sort of management and tracking of expenses was done on an Excel spreadsheet, and I entered every single transaction that we did, and I knew where every penny went. And I think that was a gift, even though it was incredibly inefficient. And we have now graduated to the wonderful world of QuickBooks and built out budgets where we can look at past expenses, and we're getting more sophisticated. But I would say also to just be hyper diligent, even if it takes a lot of time. And I think Tim said something related to this, which is that your budget in some ways is always going to reflect your mission, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. And so if you don't know where you're spending your money, you better figure it out because that's what you're prioritizing.
I would also reiterate the prayer piece, and I appreciate Dan saying that. All the provision that's happened for Ancient Paths has been nothing of ourselves. It's been partnering with a church community that wanted to see this school start, and they will not charge us any overhead. They let us use the space in the building, so that has been a huge blessing for our school and really made it possible. Also, we look at just some numbers where we're trying to reach a point where 80% of our operational costs from year to year are covered by tuition. For us, it's a particularly difficult challenge because we are an institutionally independent school like the Columbus Classical Academy is, and we cannot rely on charter funds. So we are what we've done is we've also opened up a scholarship. So our tuition is by far one of the lowest in the city, and one of the ways that's possible is that we have a scholarship fund for people to donate to and receive a tax credit. You're probably familiar with it. I know that Ohio Christian Education Network manages ours. They do a great job with it. We're very appreciative of the work that they're doing. And that's helped make our education accessible to families. And also the bridging that gap between what the costs aren't covering and where I need to have donations come in. Our hope is that we're in a place of being self-sustaining after 3 or 4 years of existence. We're tracking to be there, but fundraising isn't going to go away. It's going to be something where we'll have an annual fund that we need to raise every year. We do 2 events. We do an event in the fall, and that's student-led, and then we do an event in the spring, which is like a silent auction or an auction that we do, and we have a dinner, and folks who love the school and support the school come to that, and businesses support it by donating goods and services that we can auction off. And so, yeah, it's always something that needs to be in view. I also appreciate what was said about what you make the most, your biggest line item on your budget is going to be what you value. So that should be staff. That should be your teachers. You should be paying them. I know some of our teachers are in this room and they're thinking, why can't you pay me more? But we, and it's it is, if we're putting funds to the teachers and making sure that they're compensated well as we're able to. I hope that they would see that as a way where they are feeling valued by their administrators. So that's what I would say about budget and fundraising.
Yeah, we were never in it for the money, were we? Yeah. Just to underscore a small point here with the fundraising, we found that where, in terms of acquisition of donors, sustainability there, to show the beauty that we can create and that the students can create, highlighting that as much as possible through events like we have our Renaissance Gala downtown Cincinnati each year now. We are able to show the student artwork throughout a beautiful space. We have students speak, right? They deliver orations even at 7th grade, 8th grade, or actually our 7th grader knocked it out of the park this past year. We have events. One of our main fundraiser events is called Are You Smarter Than a 6th Grader? And we just put up questions from the 6th grade curriculum, history, Latin, mathematics, science, and all the parents and anyone else from the community comes. We have a silent auction, and the parents, the community is competing against student tables. The students win each time. But the parents love that because they get to understand the curriculum more, and they are able to see directly how impressive this education is. And again, how beautiful, right, the output there from the students too. So with fundraising, just lean into the beauty, right, and the portrait of a graduate that those donors, that the community members can see visibly embodied in those events.
So as far as fundraising goes, we're in what is very well known as a poor community. That's part of the reason why we are where we are in my home area and our home area. In ours, a lot of times giving looks like someone coming up and just saying, hey, we were able to come together as a club and we've got you this check. And then I open it up and it's like $100. And it's a big deal. It's a big deal. It's like, hey, thank you so much. Like, I'm so appreciative of the fact you gave me $100. This means so much to me. Like, it really does. Just the fact they signify their trust in us, That's what so much of ours looks like. We're at the step right now as a school. It's just even building a list of like who has capacity, like just trying to figure that out, right? So I don't really have a lot of great insight for you in that part past that. I'll focus on maybe 2 practical ones that we've done within the budget. One, I don't know why this is. Maybe this is not the case for you guys. I feel like whenever I'm forecasting and budgeting the school, I'm constantly being pushed, I don't know why, from other consultants or not sponsor side, but like consultants and other voices to, hey, budget aggressively. You're going to get more money in the future. Hey, go ahead and forecast in this way. And it looks good on paper, but I don't think it's wise. It makes us look good, but I don't think it's the truth of the matter. We want to be able to budget within our means of where we're at right now and stay true to that, okay? That's one big part. We've been very aggressive about going after grants. We won a CSP grant this year, and that's carrying a lot of stuff for us. So we've went other ways to bring money into the school and dedicating time and resources to that. I would say as a third one, it's one that I spent a lot of my time on. I negotiate everything. I don't care what contractor you are, what business you are, what you're doing, your price can come down. And if you believe in what we're doing at the school, I bet I could talk that down with you. I mean, we had a tree service guy here. He gave a quote for doing our cross-country course. We have a cross-country course now. It's going to be beautiful. Yeah, it's awesome. My board's happy for it. The original quote I had was $13,000 to chainsaw a bunch of trees. And I was like, Joe, you're a great guy. I have a still in my truck. I can take care of this. Like, that's really a lot of money. No, thank you. He'd come back, hey, I can do most of it for $3,000. Hey, perfect. That's great. Thank you. He just finished up today. So, like, you can negotiate that, and you have to protect that money. So I just think being proactive about questioning where the money's going and being aggressive about that, just to protect the money where it values, which ultimately is the teachers. I think, given our area and what local schools are paying, I actually feel like we're being pretty competitive in a lot of ways. We're not on par, but we're dedicating money towards that because we know ultimately that is what's going to make this a great school. And so we can't, like last year we taught off of collapsible desks. All of our teachers had collapsible tables. That's what we broke out. We had auction furniture from a school in Michigan we bought with U-Haul trucks, and it came down, drug it down ourselves. You do that because what mattered was paying teachers and doing that well, right? And my board's nodding their heads, they're agreeing with me, which is important for me. That's an awesome thing. So we're very grateful for that. It's just a way to value that.
One thing I would add also, just as a little insight, one of our major donors once said to me, and it's the way that he approaches giving, that someone once told him, never give money to any organization that they don't have to spend in the next 5 years. This is a major donor who endowed multiple scholarships at his boarding school in New Jersey, which has an endowment well over $100 million. And what he has observed is that basically any organization, but including his old boarding school, which he no longer gives a penny to, has drifted dramatically when their endowment got huge, because they became insulated from accountability to the people who actually believed in their mission, that were funding sort of the regular operations. And so I sometimes sit with a little tension in my mind about, I'd love to get us to a place where we're not only stable, but we're building an endowment. We have, nice, big, solid reserve fund. But he said to me that there is some wisdom in the reality that you don't want to be on a shoestring budget for the rest of your life, but the living day to day and being scrappy is part of what makes you excellent. And so it's easy to look over at the Olentangy School District and watch them build another, $130 million school on the taxpayer's dime and wish, boy, I wish we had all of that stuff. And the reality is that what's going on inside of those classrooms is unique and special and uncommon, and to sort of wish for the big dollars is not unreasonable, but it comes with a caution. And I thought that was interesting coming from him. So,
Great. We have just a couple minutes left, so I'd like to open it up for questions. Jonathan told me to leave 20 minutes for questions. We have 3. So I'm really in the doghouse, so if you can ask a question or two, I'll feel like I've succeeded. Chad, go right ahead.
All right, I'll try to be very quick. And this goes to both the funding portion and the role of religion. Clearly, we have 2 religious classical academies, and we have 2 public charter schools. Currently, under Ohio law, you can't be religious, so you have to be very careful sort of in your discussions as a public charter school related to religion. But this spring, the United States Supreme Court ruled on a case from Oklahoma where that notion of being religious as a charter school was challenged. And they ended up affirming on a 4-4 vote the Oklahoma Supreme Court that said, no, public charter schools have to be public and can't be religious. But there was a justice missing. It's widely believed the next case will likely overturn that and allow a charter school to be religious. Okay, sorry about all that.
No, that's good.
So with that in mind, do you feel the restriction on being able to be religious prevents you from operating in the manner you would like to? So if Ohio law could be challenged, is that something that sort of would help you be the school you want to be? Are your actions constricted, I guess, as a public charter school?
I'd respond by saying we are the school that we want to be. And I think in interviews with teacher candidates, this comes up often where they ask, I'm a pious individual. I aspire to, serve students in a certain way. How could I come to terms with a school like yours, right, a public charter? And I think there's this truth that there shouldn't be fear there in terms of anti-religion, right, in public schools. I find that not to be constitutional, right? When you think about the curriculum of the Hillsdale School, we teach the Hebrew tradition, right, all the way down to our lowest grades. We teach the Muslim tradition, especially in the 3rd and 4th grade. And I think even, look, I teach 9th grade literature. We teach Augustine in a public charter school. But it's one in which we have a tradition we've inherited, right, as a school, Western tradition and American tradition, and it's one that is inextricably entwined with those religious origins, right? And that doesn't mean that we are doctrinal, right, or we beating them over the head with dogma, because the fundamental principle of classical education is to teach those who may be dogmatic from the very start to have a humble receptivity to a search for truth, right, to ask good questions. And so that's our approach, right? There are beautiful things that we've inherited, and we're not ashamed, right, to showcase those. I think one example here is that our 4th grade, they were learning about Islam there in their history class. And for art, we want to build a mosaic around our water fountains, make these ugly, modern water fountains into a thing of beauty that you can observe through those geometrical shapes and colors. And the entire 4th grade was on board with that, and they did it throughout the school with each of those water fountains, and it became a little touchstone of that grade. So again, it's not something of fear or shame. We think it's constitutional to be able to inherit that and to be able to share it with our community, and they appreciate it. They do.
Okay. Anybody else? Sure.
I'll briefly respond as the other public up here for it. For us, I don't feel any kind of conflict for what we're doing. We are here. Part of our model and what we value is that this is for everybody. We want every student to come here, every student to excel in this. And I think especially in our community, like our model, we don't want to limit that access. I think the best thing for any child in our area is to come to our school. I feel that very strongly. So just a statement to that.
I hope you found these gentlemen were fabulous with their sharing of information. It's been great. Thank you to each and every one of you for your time today. Let's give them a round of applause.